Well, hello, and welcome once again to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurley. I will apologize if you can hear my voice. I'm a little bit under the weather today, but not less energetic. I just sound kind of funny, so bear with me. We had a once again another good pregame, Jim, and it started based on an event that you went to this weekend that sounded like a pretty interesting bunch of stories on its own. But from that came another self hyphen word, and today we're going to talk about acceptance. And I think before we get into that, we have some structure around that. Before we get into it, Jim, maybe you can put that in the either tell us a little about the story, or if not, tell us where this came from and how you think it relates to our framework, the five key areas of life and the flywheel.
Yeah, Mark. As we discuss every week, it starts off with our framework. The Imperfect Men's Club is based on these 5 areas of our life. In the center of everything is self-awareness. But just to remind those that aren't familiar with our framework, it is no particular order, but one important area of our life, particularly as a man, is our life's work. Could be your career. What we're going to talk about today is really maybe even beyond our career, more mission driven. So there's different stages. Obviously, when you're younger, it's more focused on income, but it's our work. The other area in our life is our relationship with others. That's our relationship with our mothers, our daughters, wives. Female is very different than a relationship with males, which is our fathers and friends and brothers and so on. And then a relationship with the world, our worldview, which two categories there. That's our heritage, our possibly religion, and our politics. The red team, the blue team, uh, affects us every day as we filter everything through these areas. And then our relationship with ourselves, which is our mental health and our physical health. We often, every episode seems to go back to the mental health and the importance of having these conversations as a man, especially at later stages of your life, which always comes back to being self-aware. And then even in relationship with money, um, two categories there: abundance and scarcity. And that's it's always going on, whether we're self-aware of it or not. But today we're going to talk about self-acceptance, and
Hmm.
that comes from as you said, I took a drive down to Southern California, so that's good 12 hours of windshield time, so you get a chance to just self-reflect. And I as we talked about, you have interactions with people, new people, and they often ask us what we do. And I remember answering that differently from when I was 20 years old to 30 years old to 40 years old to 50-year old. And that question never seems to feel right. And it still doesn't. Um, but in a real positive way, I also have just, an amazing week coming up as far as, I guess you say, milestones and achievements and talks that I've been asked to do. And I feel that uh, self acceptance is something that we all striving to do, but
Hmm.
it means something different to others. So, but yeah, I'll put it back to you. You can maybe start off with reading the definition, the meaning, and then we'll break it down.
Yeah, yeah. So the one that you found is self-acceptance is the ability to fully embrace who you are in the present moment, including your strengths, flaws, and limitations, without harsh judgment or conditional requirements. It involves recognizing that your inherent worth is separate from your mistakes or external achievements. Understanding self acceptance goes beyond dictionary definitions. It helps to explore how it functions in daily life and mental health. I think the what you said early just now about you struggle with that answer. What do you do? And I suppose another form of that is who are you when it comes
Mhm.
to self acceptance. But I think it's a constant evolution. I think that it's interesting because in some of the points that you make that we'll read later, it doesn't mean that you stop learning. It doesn't mean that you stop developing, but you do along the way accept, like Clint Eastwood says, a man's got to know his limitations. It's just like we all have limitations. And I think the extent to which we fight them makes for an unhappy life, and the extent to which we accept them and then maybe work around them or work
Mhm.
with them or in conjunction with them
Mhm.
makes for a happier life. That's been my experience anyway.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. I just thought of this, Mark. Is it the question or who asked the question?
I think it, I don't
It's
know, but I would
no, but
suggest,
there's
I
a
would
big difference,
speculate.
right? Who's asking you?
Totally. I think it has more to do with what frame of mind are you in that moment when the question is asked. Because if you're feeling like a wise ass, you might say one thing. If you're feeling insecure,
Yeah.
you might say another. And if you're feeling supremely confident, that might be a third response, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, in the present moment of today, again,
Yep.
I just, again, self-reflection, I think it has a lot more to do with who asked the question, to your point, when, but also what stage of your life did they ask a question? I don't think I've ever been comfortable with my answer. And even when I was asked last week or last weekend, two or three times, or probably more than that, um, after every time I answer, I feel that's not who I am.
Well,
That's
what's funny? What's funny when you say that is that particular question is what I've spent my life helping other people with. And
yes, it is interesting.
I'm not comfortable answering that question most of the time either. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's hypocritical or just me being human and maybe knowing my
Yeah.
limitations. I don't
That's
know.
all. It's certainly being self-aware. But I know I've played around with it at times. I think I mentioned this once before, but we did a an event, and the event it was probably 50 people, and the event was it was like speed dating because you would just it was timed every you know
Hmm.
5 minutes you move to the next station and you were asked a series of questions and one of the questions is what you do and so I think I had to answer the question like 10 or 15 times in one sitting, right? It was
Hmm.
really interesting because you got to practice based on the next person and it changed. It was a lot of fun actually, but that was when I started to realize how you can answer it. I mean, or how you present it can be very, very different, and you can get a completely different reaction. Same person. I do. It's not
Absolutely.
like I changed jobs or what I did, but just my confidence, what I said, how I said it, who I said it to, could
Well,
change
are
dramatically.
you in that moment, are you trying to impress them? Are you
Right.
trying to
This was a
impress
business
yourself?
event, so
You know,
like you said, it's your answer is trying to somewhat, well, it's always to impress someone. Let's face it. Let's just
or
be
maybe to fit
completely
in, maybe to be one of the guys. I mean,
yes.
what it makes me think of, which is I don't remember the exact quote, but Mel Brooks's movie History of the World, he's
Uh,
going up to the ticket window to get welfare or whatever because he can't find work, and B. Arthur asks him, "Well, what do you do?" And he's like, "I coalesce the vapors of society and I philosophize on the da da da." And she goes, "Oh, you're a bullshitter."
yeah, yeah. That,
I think everybody struggles with that question, Jim. I
yeah.
think my favorite part about the definition that I just read was recognizing that your inherent worth is separate from your mistakes or your external achievements. And as simple a
Mm,
statement as that is, I think that's a lifelong challenge, right?
yeah,
Because
interesting.
we
So
get enamored by external achievements, you know.
yeah, so here. I'll just kind of share a couple of my answers a few times. One, I would ask, are you in a fun way, right? This is not like I'm trying. It's not in a professional environment. It was just met somebody and they said, "What do you do?" And then I would have fun with it. I said, "Are you asking how I make money or what do I do?"
Yeah.
Right? There's a, and then they pause and go, "Yeah, there's a difference. There's a big
Yeah.
difference." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and
I think most people, at least in my experience in the professional world, you have a very unique background. I have a very unique background. We've done a variety of different things, but
Mhm.
most of the work we've done is on our own behalf, not with, not at a company in a position with a hierarchy and all that. So that makes it more challenging, but it's also most people don't like, they don't get it on first pass. Like, what do you mean you do
they
more
don't
than one thing?
Yeah, that's exactly my point. So you say at this stage in my life, they assume that what you do is related to your income,
Hmm.
which may be at one stage in your life true, but not always, especially as you get older, right? I mean, you have, rental properties or whatever. You have income from other sources than what you do, which
Hmm.
most people do. So that's the first answer. And then I will say, well, I'm an inventor. And that one always like, oh, that's cool. They don't know what that means, but
Right.
I invent things. So, and the other one would be this most recently, I would say, yeah, I have a number of different projects. I also happen to do a weekly podcast, and that one's probably the best one as far as interaction. Oh, tell me about your podcast, and then you have more. Uh, it reflects more of who you are. If that's the question, like what do you do? It's not related to money. So obviously, we're not getting paid for this, although it is related to eventually some kind of income or compensation. That's part of the why we do it. But yeah, so I think that's a significant difference of what you do versus what pays the bills or what you're. Are they asking about your lifestyle? Are they asking them? Yeah,
It it,
it's
it is because unless you count with that qualifier, then you could be answering the wrong question. Yeah,
that's
it's
right. Yeah.
it
Anyway,
is
let's
it's
let,
very
let's break this
interesting.
down a little bit more. I think we'll find more about ourselves and our own self acceptance through some of these
Yeah,
other.
the next section that you've given me is called key characteristics, and the first one is unconditional. It does not hinge on looking at a certain way, on you looking a certain way, achieving specific goals, or receiving approval from others. So, your willingness to accept yourself, at least in regard to this statement, is it's got nothing to do with the outside world. It's all internal. So self-worth comes to mind for me.
Yeah, yeah, you're that's really it's conversation back to conversation you're having with yourself. It's the most important conversation you'll ever have, right? Is the
Yep.
conversation with yourself. It's getting okay with who you are, and and then being able to share that in a way that
I think the self-awareness piece of self-acceptance is just like it's not. I don't know if it's not a light switch or a stop sign or a place in time. It's like it's an ongoing kind of journey, and
yeah,
but it's never about accomplishments that other people can see. It's your own dialogue with yourself about, look, I know I have some weaknesses and I know I have some strengths, and I appreciate them and I'm grateful for them and I'm okay with that. That doesn't mean I'm going to
yeah,
stop investigating things or stop trying new things or meeting new people, but I'm not fighting myself as to who I am. And if I bump up against one of my limitations, instead of whining about it, I'm going to just recognize it and say, okay, well, what can you do to work with that? You know,
yeah,
so that's what it
yeah.
is to me.
Hmm.
So the
Okay,
next
next.
one in the characteristics category is realistic. It requires an objective awareness of your talents and weaknesses, allowing you to accept what you cannot change. I mean, how many
Yeah,
guys did
I
we
can relate to
know
that
that?
one. You don't. I don't feel like I need to prove anything. So I think maybe in your earlier years, you're trying to impress somebody with what your through your career or through your title or accomplishments. College, we talked about, what college you went to, all those things. I think it is it's an opportunity for somebody to size you up based on what your accomplishments were.
What I see, whether it's a celebrity or an athlete or anybody who's accomplished. I enjoy watching people that are really good at stuff. It doesn't matter what the stuff is,
Hmm.
but I think that when you really find out who someone is, it's when they're in the public eye and something very challenging has happened and how they respond to that challenge.
Hmm.
Do they seek blame? Do they look outside, or do they look inside and say, how did I let that happen? How could I preclude that from happening again? And what can I learn from that? And so I think self-acceptance comes, at least in part, when you can do that, you
Yep.
know, and because it's easy to be cool and sharp and successful when things are going well. The
Yeah.
challenge is who you really are is when the shit hits the fan. That's at least been my experience.
Mhm.
So the last one in terms of characteristics is compassionate. And this goes back to what we talked about a few weeks ago, self-forgiveness. So instead of beating yourself up over shortcomings, you treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend.
Mm.
That goes back to that guy Sam Harris, who I heard years ago get up on stage, and the first line out of his mouth at a TED talk was, "If I talked to other people like I talk to me, I'd be in jail." You know.
Yeah.
So I think compassion to oneself is definitely a characteristic of self-acceptance.
Yeah.
So the next area that you have here, number two, is self-acceptance versus self-esteem. And while they often work together, these two concepts serve different functions. And then I've got a definition of self-esteem and a definition of self-acceptance. Do you want to add anything before I read those?
Again, a lot of these start to become one of the same, but self-worth, I think we talked about that before on the podcast. Yeah, your self-worth is something you always have to be working on. Not It's confidence, not too much confidence, but then low confidence. It's probably one of the most difficult things to get out of your own way when you have a low confidence. It's often advice I give to somebody. Life is really managing your confidence, making sure it's not too low and making sure it doesn't go too high. It's it really is difficult to do at different stages.
Well, I think it's difficult, at least for me, it's difficult to keep up with. It's like
Mhm.
what I had alluded to earlier. You had said something about, well, it depends on who's asking you. And sure, it does. But also to me, depending on my frame of mind, my self-worth and my willingness to be self-accepting of myself, there's a spectrum there for me. I'm not
Mhm.
always 100% like I'm spot on with this. I completely accept everything about me. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the way it works. I think you just kind of try, or at least I do, to try and stay on the right side of that. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up all the time. I'm not going to question everything. I'm going to accept the fact that, you know what? I'm not good at directions. Like, if my middle daughter will tell you, if you want to know where to go, ask dad which way to turn and go the other way, you know?
Yeah.
And that's a small one, but it's been frustrating for me in my life, and I've
Yeah.
never overcome it. And then there are some bigger ones too. I have a tendency to be stubborn, but most of my experience is that the stubborn people that I bump into are usually stubborn because they're bright, they're intelligent, that they
Mhm.
investigate things. So it's so
Yeah.
about how you look at things, right? It's not just what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes, kind of related to what we're talking about today, is all comparison leads to misery. And,
Hmm.
often when somebody's asking what self-acceptance is accepting yourself, but if somebody was to ask you what you do, it's a comparison to something else. Everything is based on a comparison to something else. So
Well, the interesting thing about that is, and you know this, is we look at somebody who's like from the outside looking in, just killing it, like materially successful, good looking, well dressed and well
Mhm.
manicured, smiling, shiny. And, as many of those people have demons floating around inside them, and you just don't know. And I
Yeah.
think that's why comparison is ridiculous, because you don't have the context of what they got through or what they're going through to be looking the way that they look. And,
Mhm.
so I think it's a fool's errand, but we do it all the time. I do it. It's human nature to do it. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how did that guy get all that stuff? How did that gal, accomplish that? None of these people are overnight successes. They all have stories of busting their ass behind the scenes, and we all know that. But when you see it and you begin to fall prey to comparison, yeah, it's frustrating as hell.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'll share a short story. Like as I mentioned, I was actually was staying in downtown Beverly Hills. So uh, that place is weird, to say the least. The whole LA thing is
Yeah.
weird, but nice little boutique hotel, nothing too crazy. But so I was there for 2 nights. This is like walking distance, 2 blocks from Rodeo Drive,
Mm-hmm.
and again, that place is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a bygone era. You could tell it's had its good days and it's no longer what it used to be. But the tours still go there, and it's a yeah, it's downtown LA. That's what it is. It's
I
part of
haven't
that
been
whole
there in
area.
a long time, but the word that pops into my head is fake. It's like
Yeah, there's a
I
little
don't.
bit of that
It's
too,
not
but
it's not the perfect word, but it's. I think you might know what I mean. You know.
yeah. Well, we're talking about the people of the place, so it's different. But the point I was making, um, I'd come back from the event, so it was still it's a nice day. It's always nice weather. So I was sitting by the pool, just having a glass of wine, and there was these right next to me was these three hotel guests, but they were early 20s, right? Two girls and a guy. So we started talking. They were laughing, and we were just the three or four of us. And it was really interesting though, because first of all, they were early 20s, so younger than our kids, and their whole thing was it was money, 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 money. It was they were asking me questions like, of course, I think they came up again. What do you do? I had plenty of time. I had a couple glasses of wine, so I gave them the long answer. Um, but it's fun though, just to get a perspective of somebody that's that age, um, and them trying to figure it out. What was my? I give them the same answers that we talk about often. Like what is? Oh yeah, they'd ask me for what advice would you have for 23-year olds or 24-year old, and I said, well, what I always say, I stopped giving advice a few years ago because my life lived experiences may be very different than yours. So I don't give advice. I'll give you a perspective. I think wisdom is timeless, but yeah, you can't extrapolate from my life to your life because things are different. It's a different time, different place, different things, and then the basic is always the same, right? 90% of life is showing up. It's hard to show up on time, show up all the time, and show up prepared. You just became part of the 10%. So don't overcomplicate it. It's not that complicated. And and often in life it's not what you do, it's what you don't do. So
Yeah,
that
that's a
was
good one as well. I've used the I don't give advice anymore thing. I put that in my pocket. I stole that from you, and I because I like it, and I think it's on one hand it's a slight nuanced difference. On the other hand, it's a huge big difference. It's kind of like, is it advice? Mm, maybe we call it observations. I'll tell you what I tried, and then I found that didn't work well for me, so I tried this, and that worked a lot better. But there are conditions behind that. There's context behind that. So
context. Yeah.
you're a different person than I am. So don't take what I say to you and say apply this to yourself.
Yep.
Take what I say to you and think about it critically. How might I apply that? Or are there
Hmm.
components of that that I might apply, but I'm not going to apply these other components because that doesn't fit who I am?
Hmm.
And I suppose expecting a 22-year-old to figure that out is probably a big ask. But you just lay it out there. I like to, especially with young people, I like to leave them maybe just thinking about stuff a little bit different. Not having
Yeah.
made any conclusions yet, just thinking a little different about something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Yeah. The
last,
other one, I always also remind them, when I was your age, it was a different time. They're I don't want to discourage them, but I also didn't want to lie to them that there's some things stacked against them. Like I bought my first house when I was 21 years old, right? They couldn't believe that because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not possible. That's not even in the cards for that generation. Of course, it helped that I stuck my head through a windshield and got a $10,000 check from the insurance company to put the down payment down. I was a cabinet maker making like $15 an hour. So I was able to make the $900 a month payment. The point is, uh, when I was because they were asking me what was I doing when I was 23. I said, well, I was a cabinet maker. I was and and so we were just going back and forth about their life and my life.
Hmm.
It's different. You can't extrapolate.
Yeah,
But
it is. you and I joke about not being the old guys that are going, it was way different back in my day. But,
I
I reflect,
really, yeah, I try not to
I
have.
agree with
Yeah.
you, but I also know that from my father, he loves to say, and there's some truth to it. It's not much different.
Mhm.
Things are the most important things are the same.
Yes.
Other things are just conditional. And so I think that the truth is somewhere in between. And I
Hmm.
think what he really means by that is don't let the complexity that you're applying to today, whether it's
Hmm.
true or not,
Yep.
get in the way of keeping things simple,
Hmm.
right? Because
That's
people are
good
still
advice. Yeah.
people. The right
Yeah.
thing is still the right thing. Yeah, there are different complexities. But I mean, for every complexity that we have today, there was a different complexity back then, or there were
Yep.
bigger obstacles to things. So, it really is the way you look at it in my
Yeah.
experience. But the
Yeah.
last one, as we're bumping up against time, is that self-acceptance doesn't mean stagnation. And I think this is a good one because, you know, I think what it means to say, well, let me read it. A common misconception is that accepting yourself means you'll stop trying to improve, that you must embrace toxic behaviors. In reality, the opposite is true. By dropping the exhausting pressure to be perfect, you create the emotional safety needed to grow. You can accept your current reality while still actively working to build healthier habits or develop new skills to explore the psychological foundations of this concept further. And so, yeah, I think the word acceptance sounds like it has a finality to it, but I don't think that it does. I think what this is alluding to, and I agree, means accepting who you are right now doesn't mean you don't continuously try to improve, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
It does. And going back to the a bit to the conversation I was having um, with the 323 year olds was be referable. Remember, we did a whole podcast on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Remember that?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that's how I said it. They says, they just kept asking, well, like they were kind of getting into it. And then, again, it helped. They had a couple of drinks too. And they said, but what else? What else? What else? And I said, well, yeah, be referable. And they said, well, what does that mean? I said, to be referable uh, is something that put yourself in the positions of you referring a friend to somebody. And in order to be referable, you have to be one, dependable,
hmm
reliable. And if something goes bad, that's your reputation. So people will, especially at this stage in our lives, when you have friends or you have business people that respect you for who you are. If you make a bad referral, then that's a reflection on um, your character. So if you think about what it takes to be a good referral, and you live your life with those with that framework of um, showing up on time, not making excuses, do the basics, right? Doing what you say you're going to do. Um, Become referable, and then take times you'll screw up once in a while. That's part of being young, but take that very serious because if you're referable, then you'll always have opportunities, whether for a job, could even be doesn't have to be work related. It could be referable to meet somebody for a date, or could be a lot of different things. But
yeah, yeah.
be
Well, I
referable.
think it speaks to this idea that what you've just given there is a different way to think about things. And if
Mhm.
that person or those kids walk away because they said to you, well, what do you mean by that? Well,
Mhm.
that's for you to determine, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Just take that observation and think
Mhm.
about that deeply over a long period of time, and you'll figure it out. You'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
No,
That's
interesting
the
you picked up on that
observation.
because you're right. You want them to think. I'm not giving them answers to life. I'm
Right.
giving them a way of thinking.
hmm
But it's interesting how you caught that, Mark. You went straight to it's not about them. What if you were to refer somebody? What would you want that person to be like?
Right.
Now all of a sudden they start to live their life with those same standards, and it's it's not complicated, but it has to be very individual of how you come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No,
but
it's an interesting way of looking at it, and I do I love that notion of wisdom and observation versus advice. But yeah,
Yeah.
self-acceptance is a, I think it's a lifelong challenge. I don't think I agree with this last assessment that it doesn't mean stagnation. It doesn't mean anything's final. Self-improvement continues because I think
Mhm.
that's lifeblood, right? That mission stuff. But
Yeah.
accepting what you, well, back to St. Francis of Assisi, determine what you can control and what you can't, and focus your
Yeah.
energies on the things that you can control.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All
All
right,
right,
man.
Mark. Till next
Thanks,
week.
Jim. See ya.